What would you do if your own family threw a party to celebrate the day you left? If the people who were supposed to love you most hung a banner that read, "Freedom at last," and danced with joy as you walked away in tears? This is Emily Carter's story, a woman who spent years being called a burden, who worked herself to exhaustion for a family that mocked her every effort, and who finally found the courage to choose herself. But when tragedy struck and they came crawling back, begging for her help, Emily faced an impossible choice: forgive and forget, or protect the peace she fought so hard to build. Her decision will shock you, inspire you, and remind you that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. This is a story about finding strength in solitude, dignity in distance, and freedom in finally putting yourself first. Emily Carter had always been the quiet backbone of her family, though nobody would ever admit it. While her father Thomas struggled to find consistent work, while her sister Sophie pursued her dreams, while her brother Daniel aimed for bigger things, Emily worked. She took every job she could find: front desk shifts at dingy motels, cashier positions at busy supermarkets, evening cleaning shifts at office buildings. None of these were considered good jobs by her family, but they kept food on the table every morning. Before her shift, Emily would place groceries on the kitchen counter. Fresh bread, milk, eggs, vegetables, whatever the family needed. And every evening, she'd come home exhausted to comments that cut deeper than any physical wound. "Emily, you're still wearing that uniform." Sophie would sneer, wrinkling her nose in disgust. "You should try to be more like Daniel. He's aiming higher," Margaret, her mother, would add with a disappointed sigh. Emily swallowed their words like bitter pills, each insult settling heavy in her chest. Late at night, when the house was finally quiet, she'd lock herself in the bathroom and stare at her reflection in the mirror. One day, she would whisper to herself, tears streaming down her face, "You will be free from this." She had no idea then how painful that freedom would cost her, or that the cruelty she endured was only beginning. The worst part wasn't the mockery or the dismissiveness, it was the invisibility. Emily could work a 16-hour day, come home with groceries and a warm meal she'd prepared, and still be treated as if she'd contributed nothing. Her existence had become a burden they tolerated rather than a presence they valued. And deep down, in the quiet moments between exhaustion and sleep, Emily began to wonder if they were right about her. The cruelty didn't happen overnight, it accumulated like storm clouds gathering strength. Thomas began calling Emily the extra mouth, saying it loud enough for her to hear but quiet enough to pretend it was a joke if she protested. Margaret would sigh dramatically whenever Emily asked for something as simple as transport money, as if the request itself was an unbearable imposition. Sophie, who worked in marketing and never let anyone forget it, would roll her eyes whenever Emily mentioned her dreams. Dreams. Sophie once laughed. "Emily, you need to be realistic. Some people are meant to dream, and others are meant to, well, survive." Daniel was perhaps the cruelest in his indifference. He'd mock her jobs, her clothes, her lack of ambition, all while living off the money Emily quietly contributed to household expenses. But the breaking point came one evening at dinner, a meal Emily had cooked after an exhausting double shift. The family sat around the table, and the conversation turned to Emily's presence in the house. Margaret set down her fork and declared with chilling casualness, if Emily ever left this house, maybe peace would finally return. The words hung in the air like poison. Sophie's face lit up with cruel delight. "Can you imagine the relief?" she added, laughing. "I would throw the biggest party." Emily felt her throat tighten, her heart cracking into pieces she wasn't sure she could ever put back together. She looked at her father, hoping for even a shred of defense, but Thomas only noticed her trembling hands as she picked up her plate. "Emily, don't start crying," he snapped, his voice harsh and impatient. "You know it's true." That night, Emily lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, tears streaming into her pillow. "I have no one," she whispered into the darkness. "I truly have no one." In that moment, something fundamental shifted inside her, a realization that she would never be loved by the people who were supposed to love her most. And with that realization came the first spark of a decision that would change everything. After months of quiet saving, hiding every spare dollar she could manage, Emily found a small one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city. It wasn't much: peeling wallpaper, a window that barely opened, a neighborhood that wasn't particularly safe, but it was hers. The day she decided to leave, she packed her bag slowly, each item placed carefully as tears dropped onto her clothes. "I'm leaving," she announced quietly, standing in the living room where her family was gathered. She expected questions, maybe even protests, but what happened next would haunt her forever. Before she could finish her sentence, Sophie jumped to her feet, cheering. "Finally. Oh my God, finally." Daniel started clapping, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "I thought this day would never come," he said, his voice filled with relief. Margaret didn't even look up from her phone. "Make sure you don't come back crying," she said dismissively, as if Emily leaving was nothing more than a minor inconvenience being resolved. Thomas remained silent, but his lack of objection spoke volumes. Emily walked out with her suitcase and 2 garbage bags containing her worldly possessions, silent tears streaming down her face. But the truly haunting moment came that evening. Emily had to pass by the house one last time to return her gate key. As she approached, she heard loud music booming from inside. When she got close enough to see through the window, her heart shattered completely. A giant banner hung across the living room wall, "Freedom at last." Her family was dancing, laughing, toasting with glasses raised high. "We are finally free," Sophie screamed, her voice cutting through the music. Thomas raised his glass and shouted, "No more burden." Emily stood frozen on the sidewalk, watching the celebration of her absence. Her hand covered her mouth to stifle the sob threatening to escape. "They are celebrating because I left," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They are actually celebrating." She turned away from the house, from the family, from the life she'd known, and walked into the darkness alone. Emily's new apartment was silent in a way that both comforted and terrified her. No insult echoed off the walls, no disappointed sighs greeted her arrival, no comparisons to her more successful siblings. The first night, she sat on the bare floor eating instant noodles straight from the pot because she had no furniture, no dishes, nothing but the clothes in her bags and the crushing weight of loneliness. "This is my life now," she whispered to the empty room, tears mixing with her noodles. "Peace, even if it's lonely." But it was peace, real peace, for the first time in her life. She spent the first few weeks working extra shifts at both jobs, slowly furnishing her small space. A second-hand couch from a thrift store. A small dining table someone was giving away. A bed that creaked when she moved but was entirely her own. Every new item felt like a victory, proof that she could survive without them. At night, she would scroll through social media, seeing photos of her family laughing at dinners, going on outings, celebrating Sophie's promotions and Daniel's birthdays. Not once did anyone acknowledge her absence. Not a single post mentioned her. Not one message asked if she was okay. "They don't even notice I'm gone," she said to herself one evening, staring at a photo of them at a restaurant she used to take them to. Or maybe this is what they wanted all along. The realization hurt, but it also freed something inside her. If they could move on so easily, why was she still holding on? As months passed, Emily began to rebuild not just her living space but herself. She took on freelance administrative work, attended online classes during her breaks, studied late into the night. Her supervisors at work noticed her dedication. "Emily, you're one of the most dependable people we have," her manager told her one morning. "I see leadership qualities in you." The compliment made her uncomfortable. She wasn't used to praise, but it also planted a seed of confidence she'd never known existed. Slowly, painfully, but surely, Emily was becoming someone she could be proud of. 2 years passed in relative peace. Emily earned a promotion, moved to slightly better hours, and even began building friendships with coworkers who treated her with respect she'd never known. She still lived simply, still worked hard, but now she was working for herself. The wounds from her family hadn't fully healed, but they'd scabbed over enough that she could function without constant pain. Then one afternoon, her phone rang from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. "Emily, it's your mother," came Margaret's weak voice, and Emily felt her heart freeze. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Thomas took over the phone, his voice strained and irritated. "Your mother is sick. Your sister is busy with her job, and Daniel has his hands full. We need you to come home and help take care of her." The words hit Emily like a slap. After 2 years of silence, they remembered she existed only because they needed something. So you remember I exist? Emily replied slowly, leaning back in her office chair. Sophie's voice suddenly came through, sharp and impatient. Emily, stop being dramatic and come home. We don't have time for your feelings. The audacity of it, the sheer audacity, took Emily's breath away. You celebrated when I left, Emily said, her voice cold but controlled. I saw the banner. I heard the laughter. I watched you dance because I was gone. And now you call me because you need something. Silence filled the line. Then Thomas sighed impatiently. We were just joking that day. Don't hold on to childish things. Emily closed her eyes, feeling years of suppressed anger rising. You made it very clear that my presence was a burden, she said quietly. Now let my absence be the same. She ended the call, her hand shaking as she set the phone down. For a moment, she sat in silence, processing what had just happened. Then she whispered to herself, I'm not going back. Not ever. The days following the phone call were strangely quiet. Emily expected her family to keep calling, to bombard her with messages or guilt trips, but they only tried twice more. One short text from Thomas, we need you. Come home. And a voice note from Sophie complaining, you're being selfish, Emily. You know mom can't take care of herself right now. Emily deleted both without responding. That evening, as she sat on a small couch eating dinner, she whispered to herself, selfish. After everything. After they celebrated my pain. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling how steady her heartbeat had become. She was no longer the trembling girl who cried under their roof. She was a woman who had rebuilt herself from nothing. A week later, Emily returned home from work to find someone standing by her apartment door. Daniel. He leaned against the wall, looking annoyed and uncomfortable, as if being there was beneath him. What are you doing here? Emily asked sharply, keys in hand. Can we not do this outside? Just open the door, Daniel replied with a frustrated sigh. But Emily shook her head. Say what you came to say. Daniel exhaled heavily. Mom's getting worse. Dad says you're being dramatic. Sophie is overwhelmed. We all need to work together, and you're the only one refusing. Emily stared at him for a long moment. The only time you all need me is when I'm supposed to fix something for you. But where were you when I needed family? Daniel scoffed. Oh, come on, Emily. You always exaggerate things. At that, something inside Emily snapped. I watched you celebrate my departure, she said quietly but firmly. I saw the banner. Freedom at last. Do you know what that did to me? Daniel's face twitched, but he said nothing. Go home, Daniel, Emily said. I'm not coming. The next day, social media lit up with subtle jabs from her family. Sophie posted, some people love playing victim even when family needs them most. Thomas shared a vague status, children forget the ones who raised them the moment they taste independence. Emily saw it all, but instead of crying like she once would have, she laughed bitterly. They can't manipulate me anymore, she whispered, and muted their accounts. 3 more weeks passed, and Emily's resolve remained unshaken, though the emotional weight crept into her quiet moments. Sometimes she woke at dawn, sat on the edge of her bed, and wondered, am I really doing the right thing? But every time doubt crept in, memories flooded back, Margaret calling her a burden, Thomas sighing whenever she entered a room, Sophie laughing at her clothes, Daniel mocking her salary point. One rainy afternoon, there was a knock on her door. Emily hesitated before opening it, expecting Sophie or Daniel, but instead found Mrs. Alden, her elderly neighbor, holding a small envelope. This was left with me by someone who said you weren't home, she explained kindly. Emily thanked her and closed the door before tearing the envelope open. Inside was a handwritten letter, shaky and uneven, clearly written by Margaret. Emily, it began. I know you don't want to see us. I know we hurt you. I'm not going to pretend I didn't say terrible things, but I'm sick. Really sick. And they're panicking. Sophie is overwhelmed. Daniel is pretending to be strong, but he's not. Your father, he won't admit he's scared, but he is. The letter continued, I don't deserve your help. I know that. But I'm asking, not as your mother, but as a woman who made mistakes she can't undo. If you want to ignore this, I understand. Emily's fingers trembled as she read, not because she felt guilt, but because she had waited her entire life to hear even a sliver of remorse. She sat on the couch, staring at the letter, whispering, "Why now? Why only when you need me?" She pressed the letter to her lap and quietly said, "It's too late." The words felt both liberating and devastating. Later that night, Thomas called. Emily answered, not out of softness, but out of clarity. "Your mother is asking for you," Thomas said, his voice tight. Emily held the phone tighter. "You need me. Not Mom. You. Because you don't want to carry the responsibility you've always pushed onto me." Thomas exhaled sharply. "This isn't the time to bring up old things." "Old things?" Emily let out a humorless laugh. "You made a banner and threw a party because I left. You told me I was a burden. All of you. And now you want me to forget everything because it suits you." When Thomas tried to protest, Emily caught him with finality. "You made your choice years ago. Now I'm making mine. I won't come." She ended the call, tears slipping down her cheeks, not from weakness, but from the painful freedom of choosing herself. Winter arrived with a coldness that seeped through every corner of the city. Emily felt strangely grounded, as if the frost outside mirrored the emotional clarity forming inside her. She no longer checked her family's social media pages, no longer waited for updates or apologies. Her heart was no longer tethered to people who had repeatedly shown her she was disposable, but one afternoon, as Emily left the grocery store with a bag of vegetables, she ran into Sophie, something she'd never expected. Sophie stood by the parking lot, dressed in her usual stylish coat, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. For the first time ever, Emily didn't feel small in her presence. They froze when they saw each other, the winter air thickening between them. Sophie approached slowly, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "Emily, I've been trying to reach you." Emily tightened her grip on her bag. "I don't want to do this here, Sophie." But Sophie shook her head. "Please, just listen. Mom's condition is getting worse. She's barely eating. She keeps asking for you." Emily felt a sharp ache pierce her chest, but she hid it under a calm expression. "Sophie, do you remember what you said the day I left? The day you hung that banner?" Sophie's face shattered for a moment, shame flooding her features. "Emily, I was stupid. I was cruel. I didn't understand the damage I was doing. I regret it. All of it." Her voice cracked with genuine emotion. Emily remained still, her voice quiet and unwavering. "I'm not coming to the house. Not to help. Not to take care of Mom. Not to fix what all of you broke." Sophie nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "Could you at least talk to her? Call her. She's scared, Emily. And for the first time in her life, she realizes what she did to you." Emily exhaled shakily, the cold air burning her lungs. "Sophie, I can forgive all of you, but I need distance. I spent years begging for love from a family that mocked me. I can't go back to that. Not even for guilt. Not even for sickness." Sophie covered her mouth as tears slipped down her cheeks. "I understand. I just wish we had done better by you." Emily did not respond. Sophie stepped back, her voice barely a whisper. "Take care, Emily." And she walked away, leaving Emily standing in the cold, her heart heavy with grief that wasn't new, just resurfaced. One evening, as Emily returned home with groceries, she found someone sitting on the staircase near her door. Margaret. Emily froze, her hand tightening around the grocery bag. Her mother looked smaller than she remembered, her hair thinner, her shoulders slumped. Margaret lifted her tired eyes and whispered, "Emily." The sound of her voice, weak, trembling, unsteady, hit Emily unexpectedly. She wanted to turn away, to walk back down the stairs, but her feet refused to move. "How did you find my address?" Emily asked, her tone cold but not harsh. "Daniel drove me. He's downstairs waiting in the car." Margaret tried to smile. Emily didn't respond. Margaret inhaled shakily. I didn't come to beg. I came to see you. I needed to. Emily stared at her mother in silence. The woman who once called her dead weight now sat before her, fragile and humbled. Emily, Margaret began softly, I know I failed you. I know I wasn't the mother you needed. I said cruel things, things a mother should never say. Emily's throat tightened, but she remained silent. Margaret continued, tears slipping down her cheeks. When you left, I thought I'd feel relief. I really did. But all I felt was emptiness. And when I saw that banner they hung, I wanted to tear it down, but I said nothing because that's who I was, a coward who let everyone else treat you like you didn't matter. Slowly, Emily set her groceries down and sat beside Margaret, leaving a small distance between them. Why now? She whispered. Why only when things went wrong? Margaret wiped her eyes. Because sickness forces you to confront what matters. And you mattered more than I ever let myself admit. Emily's jaw tightened. You hurt me, Mom. All of you did. You let them celebrate my pain. Margaret nodded weakly. And I regret that every single day. Emily looked down at her hands. Do you know how many nights I cried myself to sleep? How many times I wished even one of you would say you loved me? Margaret reached out a trembling hand but stopped halfway when Emily flinched. I'm sorry, Margaret whispered. I can't take back the years I ruined. I can't erase the cruelty. But I came to look you in the eyes and admit that I was wrong. Emily exhaled shakily, her heart a storm of emotions, anger, sorrow, longing, and grief. I can forgive, Emily whispered slowly, but I can't return. I won't go back to people who rejoiced in my suffering. Margaret nodded weakly. I understand. Just don't disappear from my life completely. I don't deserve it, but I'm asking. Emily didn't respond. They sat in silence until Margaret slowly pulled herself up. Goodbye, Emily, she said softly before walking down the stairs. As her mother disappeared from view, Emily felt hot tears pouring down her face, tears not for her mother, but for the girl she used to be, the girl who had always hoped for this moment. In the weeks that followed Margaret's visit, Emily felt an emotional fog settle over her life. She went through her routines, work, study, sleep, but her mind constantly drifted to that moment on the stairs. For the first time in years, she'd seen Margaret not as the towering figure who crushed her spirit, but as a flawed, broken woman staring at her own regrets. One cold evening, as Emily left work, her phone rang. Daniel. Emily answered, her voice guarded. What is it this time, Daniel? He sighed, sounding unexpectedly tired. Emily, Mom isn't doing well. She's getting weaker. The doctor says she needs constant care. Mom has been asking for you. Emily closed her eyes, irritation and sorrow battling within her. Daniel, I'm not your safety net anymore. You can't treat me like trash for years and expect me to drop everything when you snap your fingers. His voice cracked slightly. I know we hurt you, okay. I know we messed up. But Mom. His voice trailed off, and for the first time, Emily had genuine fear behind his words. That night, alone in her dim apartment, Emily sat by the window, her usual thinking place. She hugged her blanket to her chest as the outside world continued its indifferent rhythm. Why does choosing myself hurt so much? She whispered. She knew the answer. Because despite everything, a part of her had once hoped they would choose her, cherish her, love her. The next day, Emily made a decision. She drove to the old neighborhood, not to return, but to confront the past one last time. She stood outside the house where she grew up, her heart heavy. Sophie and Daniel approached, eyes wide with guilt and fear. Thomas stepped forward, avoiding her gaze. Emily took a deep breath and said, I am not your backup plan. You made your choice years ago. You looked down on me, called me a burden, celebrated my departure. Now you want me to fix what you broke. Sophie's face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks. Daniel swallowed hard, speechless. Margaret appeared weakly at the doorway, leaning on Thomas. Emily, please, she whispered. But Emily's voice was steady, unwavering. I forgive you, she repeated. But I won't come back. I won't care for people who never cared for me. I choose my peace, and I choose myself. With that, Emily turned and walked to her car. She could hear sobs behind her, feel the weight of their regret, but she no longer carried it. As she started the engine, she whispered to herself, I survived them. I survived myself. And now I am free. The street stretched before her, endless possibilities ahead. Emily drove away from the house, away from the pain, toward a life built on her own terms, a life where she could love, forgive, and thrive without the shadow of cruelty following her. And for the first time in years, she smiled through her tears, knowing that she had chosen herself, and that choice was her ultimate victory. Moral lesson. Emily's story teaches us a powerful truth: forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation, and choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love us most become the ones who hurt us deepest. And sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is walk away from toxicity, even when it wears the face of family. You don't owe your presence to people who celebrated your absence. You don't owe your care to those who called you a burden. And you certainly don't owe your peace to anyone who shattered it repeatedly without remorse. Emily's journey reminds us that we are worthy of love, respect, and dignity, and if we can't find it where we came from, we have every right to build it where we're going. Real strength isn't in enduring abuse, it's in recognizing your worth and protecting it, even when it breaks your heart to do so. It's in choosing the painful freedom of solitude over the comfortable prison of toxic relationships. Emily chose herself, and in doing so, she found something she'd never known: genuine peace. If Emily's story touched your heart, if it reminded you of your own struggles or inspired you to protect your own peace, please hit that subscribe button. This channel is dedicated to sharing powerful stories of resilience, self-worth, and the courage to choose yourself. Come back for more stories that will challenge you, inspire you, and remind you that you deserve better. Your story matters, your peace matters, and your choice to protect it matters most of all. Subscribe now, and let's continue this journey together.